This meeting to order at 6 p.m. on November 10th, 2021. We'll begin with a roll call. Please say here or present once I say your name. Advait. Present. Adagarla. Ulrich. Here. Brecht. Here. Blythe. Carter. Claiborne. Here. Cooper. Crabb. DeVore. Filippi. Finaldi, Goff, Hayes, Larson, Lent, Mahoney, Rios, McCready, Patel, Paulson, Risvik, Ruley, Seth, Sayaway, Simmons, Skaggs, Stout, Strickland, Thornton, Wagmeister, Weathers, Zuber. Right, we'll go to the Pledge of Allegiance led by Speaker Weathers. All right, for tonight's program, it will be a First Amendment training led by Chief Legal Counsel Mike Norton. So you can go ahead and head up to the podium. We'll have slides ready for you.
Good evening, and thanks for the invitation and for the opportunity to talk with you a little bit tonight. I've been asked to just kind of talk about the First Amendment and provide a little bit of training and background for you tonight. And I've been told I have about a half hour, but if that's too long, let me know when you're tired and I'll shorten things up. It's a big subject. We could probably talk for days on it, but I'll try to keep it to a half hour or less if you tell me so. Well, the first thing I want to just preface is, I'm a big believer in the First Amendment. Part of my job is to supervise or look at these issues, the legal issues that face the university. And I think that, the First Amendment is a core value of the university. It's a core value of the state, not only because we are a state actor and it applies to us, but because I think it is consistent with the ideas of an academic institution, right, to allow the free exchange of ideas, even when those ideas are not popular. But having said that, I also recognize and don't want to diminish the pain and the real feeling that sometimes occurs when someone uses their First Amendment rights in a way that harms or hurts someone else. That is real as well. And also something that even though we have a core value on the university campus of maintaining and supporting First Amendment rights, the impact of that is real as well, and we can't disregard that either. And I believe that there can be a way that we can recognize that and support individuals who are impacted while still reflecting the core value of the First Amendment. And that's really the challenge. It's a challenge for all of you. It's a challenge for us as administrators. It's really a leadership challenge for us. How do we have an inclusive campus where people can feel safe while at the same time respecting the value of the First Amendment? That is our shared challenge. And sometimes we do a great job of that, and sometimes, honestly, we don't probably do as well as we can do. But the answer is not disregarding the First Amendment. And the answer is not disregarding, the impact or the pain that those rights cause sometimes. We have to find a way to allow those two fundamental kind of purposes to coexist on our campus. And so I invite you to think about those things. Think about those issues. Think about how you can lead in that context. how can you as leaders help to kind of bridge the gap between the First Amendment and the impact that that sometimes has on campus? Because that's where true leadership really comes from in this area, right? That's where the rubber hits the road for us on the campus. So that's kind of a preface. I mean, if you have grown up in the time of your parents or maybe your grandparents, and we can change the slide. I don't know if the slides are all that impactful. Let's keep going. We don't need to talk about the agenda. Okay. So your grandparents probably grew up in an era where the First Amendment was used to address McCarthyism. I'm sure have heard of McCarthyism. Basically, the threat of communism, the fear of communism caused particularly academics to be targeted, right? And the First Amendment was used to protect them from that targeting, okay? If we go to the next slide, your parents, still maybe your grandparents, also grew up in the era of the civil rights. The First Amendment was really used in that era to protect the civil rights movement, okay? And it didn't always work, but slowly the federal government's use of the Constitution, the First Amendment rights, really had a sea change with respect to civil rights movement. So when Martin Luther King was arrested on the court steps while praying, that's what he was arrested for, was for praying. The First Amendment swooped in and allowed him to seek redress, and that eventually led to substantial gains in the First Amendment or in the civil rights movement. Next slide. Now your parents, for sure. The anti-war movements from the Vietnam era, right? Those issues, those happened on campuses, right? Campus administrators, state leaders wanted to suppress the speech on campus about the anti-war movement. And the First Amendment was used to allow that speech to come forward. So if we go to today, kind of ironically, in all of those instances that I've just talked about, kind of the pressure on campus administrators was there's this speech that campus administrators didn't want to tolerate. They were taking action against speakers on campus because they didn't want those views to be expressed, and the First Amendment was used to allow those views to be expressed on campus. Today, I would say 80 to 90% of the complaints that we receive in our office is not that, it's complaints that the university administrators are not doing enough to suppress speech that is offensive to people on campus. So it's almost a complete reversal of what traditionally we've seen about these free speech issues on campus. And so I don't know, I bring that up not to suggest anything's wrong with today or with these thoughts on campus. It's just an expression to you about how things have changed with regard to the First Amendment over time. And I think that's part of the reason why we're seeing some of the challenges that we see with the First Amendment on campus today, because there is a fundamentally different view about how the First Amendment works on campus and what the impact of those things are on campus as well. I think it comes out of what I was talking about at first, just about the recognition. Your generation is uniquely tuned in to the feelings of others, right? And how speech sometimes impacts others. And that's part of your upbringing, which is a tremendously positive aspect of your generation. But it does conflict in some ways with traditional First Amendment views. And so, helping you connect those good positive impacts with the value of the First Amendment, I think, is an important thing that we have to do as leaders on campus. So next slide, please. So fundamentally, the First Amendment basically says that Congress can establish no law restricting the free exercise of religion or the freedom of speech. And so in this aspect, Congress basically means any state actor. So any, university administrator, we're state actors because we work for a public institution, a state institution. When you all, sitting in this role as student government leaders, take action, you're also Congress for purposes of the First Amendment in some roles. So even you are state actors in some contexts, and we'll get into that a little bit more as we go forward. So any law, that just means any burden to free expression by a state actor is protected against or by the First Amendment of the Constitution. And so you can think of all kinds of things that happen on campus that fall into this category of laws as defined by the First Amendment. So chalking rules and rules about where you can post posters and all kinds of anything that we do, any kind of policy that we make can be subject to First Amendment scrutiny. With you all, really, because you're distributing government money, that's how you become government actors, right? So you dictate how money from the government is spent. I think in some respects you're assigning space in government buildings sometimes. So anything that you do that uses government resources, where you distribute government resources or make decisions about how resources are going to be used, you're in a role of a state actor. And if you do that in a way that impinges on someone's First Amendment rights, then you, in this context, are state actors who can violate First Amendment rights of an individual. And you've seen that happen, right? Last year, you and I, student government, made some decisions clearly unconstitutional, okay? You set aside kind of the politics of it. We probably have all kinds of different people and where they land on the politics of that issue, but there was no question that the action was based on ideology and was not supported by the First Amendment. So you can see how you play a role and why it's important for you to understand and recognize the role that you play with respect to these issues. Next slide. So go ahead, let's move on. We've talked about that. So not all speech is protected. There are a few very narrow categories, and when I say very narrow, I can't emphasize to you enough. I could say very, 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 very narrow. That's what it is. It's extremely narrow categories of exceptions to First Amendment. So incitement of eminent lawless action. This is one, where if you stand on the steps of Beershire and there's a group there and you say, let's go up to the third floor and kidnap Mike Norton and take him hostage, that probably is not protected speech, right? You're trying to encourage someone to take action right at that moment to go do something that's lawless. Okay, probably not protected. Although I will say the Supreme Court has very narrowly interpreted this rule. So the most recent cases, for example, an email that said, get this right, but we will take the streets later, not sufficient, right? Because it wasn't eminent. If you say you're going to do something later, then that's not eminent. Supreme Court said no, that's protected speech. That was a KKK leader. There might have to be revenge taken if we catch you, okay? That was not found to be eminent, a threat of eminent lawless action, because they're saying we might have to do something in the future. So I just use these illustrations. These are from real court cases just to show you how narrow this exception is being interpreted by the courts. Very high bar on that exception. Fighting words basically have been eliminated from Supreme Court jurisprudence. Used to be fighting words. If you say something that you know is going to elicit an immediate violent response, that's not protected speech. But the Supreme Court, every case that's come before it arguing that fighting words are not protected speech have lost. So I can't even think of what you could say that would fit into this category right now under current jurisprudence. So this one has all but been eliminated. True threats, that's still probably the most heavy of the exceptions. True threats are still not protected speech. So if someone says something that they know will be interpreted by the hearer as the threat of immediate violence, that is not protected speech. And unfortunately, we've seen some of that on campus at times, and that's reacted to usually by the police, and that is not protected speech. And then obscenity is another category that still is unprotected, although again, it's a very high bar. Most things that many people would find obscene is also protected. So very high bar there as well. Next slide. We get a lot of questions about hate speech. Is hate speech protected speech? There is no recognized exception to the First Amendment for hate speech. So many things and for one thing, hate speech really doesn't have a definition, a legal definition, and so many things that you find hateful and that I find hateful are absolutely protected speech. Just categorizing things as hate or hateful or offensive, all of that is typically protected. And I'll say, pause here for a minute just to say, all of these First Amendment battles occur in the most offensive speech you can possibly imagine, right? And I don't want you to think that because the university or because my office is defending someone's right to say something, that we're defending the ideology behind that speech or that we somehow agree with that speech. That is not the case. I find much of the stuff that I find myself defending from a First Amendment perspective as personally abhorrent to me and completely and totally offensive. And you'll be in positions in your life in the future where particularly, I know some of you are political scientists or economists or future lawyers. You'll be put in this space, right, where you're asked to defend someone's right when you are diametrically opposed to the underlying kind of personalities of that individual or thoughts of that individual. But it doesn't diminish the First Amendment kind of importance. Because what we've found, what we're really talking about here is, do you want government to decide what speech is allowed and what speech is not allowed? That's really what we're talking about. Personally, you can make all kinds of decisions personally, and if you're in a private entity, the First Amendment doesn't apply to you. It's all about giving government power over the ability to decide what speech is allowed or not. And we found through history that every time that happens, minority speech is suppressed. And it makes sense, right? Because if you have a majority system of government and they're the ones who then are deciding what speech is allowed or not allowed, then majority speech is always going to be protected and minority speech is always going to be not protected. So the real issue, as you think about and talk about the First Amendment, is do we want government to make value decisions about what speech is good or bad? I can tell you, that would be counter to the civil rights movement. It would be counter to the anti-war movement. If government was allowed to decide what speech was important, those movements would never have been successful. Okay. Next slide, please. So another category, broad category of, it's not really speech, it really is conduct, but another broad category of exception to the First Amendment is harassment. So speech that becomes so severe and pervasive that it actually crosses the line to conduct is also not protected by the First Amendment. And so you see this in our policies, our harassment policies. Severe and pervasive conduct that substantially interferes with an individual's employment or educational rights is not protected by the First Amendment. And so, this you see this in misconduct, sexual misconduct, or violent misconduct, or pervasive and targeted kind of harassing behavior that turns into conduct that is disruptive. That's harassment, and that's not protected. But I think sometimes we struggle with understanding that, because you think about someone who sees a swastika etched into a mirror, in their dorm room, or not in their dorm room, but in their dorm area, right? You can imagine that is harassing. Okay? It probably does not meet the standard of harassment that we're talking about here, or someone the atrocious behavior of someone calling someone else the N-word on campus. Totally offensive and inappropriate, but also not harassment under the legal standard, and actually protected speech. Now, if that happens every day, and the individual is also at the same time being intimidating and threatening to them, or is suggesting that person shouldn't be active in some organization or class or community, then that becomes harassment, and that can be dealt with. Okay? Next slide, please. There also are time, place, and manner restrictions that are not against the First Amendment. So if we do things that are content neutral and consistent, then that's not based on ideology or speech. It's just rules that we have. So, for example, we have our facilities use policies, right? And so we have a policy that says you can't put posters on vertical surfaces in buildings. Okay. So if you put a poster on the window, we can come take that down, because it doesn't matter what, we're not saying or making value judgments about what's in the poster. We're just saying you can't have any posters on the windows, okay? But the trick there is you have to be consistent, right? So if you see a poster on the window advertising Girl Scout cookies, you have to treat that poster exactly the same way that you treat a poster that's advertising a white supremacist rally, okay? If you allow the Girl Scout cookie poster to remain there and then only react when the white supremacist rally poster is placed there, then you've got a First Amendment problem. Okay? You have to be completely content neutral rules about that. So chalking is another good one, right? The chalking rule has defined areas where chalking is allowed and some smaller defined areas where chalking is not allowed. Doesn't matter what you chalk. Whatever you chalk in an area that's not allowed for chalking, that can be erased, right? As long as we're doing it that way, as long as we're not looking at, well, I like this chalking and I don't like that chalking, so I'm going to remove some and leave others, right? We have to be content neutral and viewpoint neutral about how we're reacting to these things. Now, to be clear, right, as students, not in your role as student government, but just in your role as everyday students, if you see a poster that you don't like, you're not bound, I guess I'm saying. I'm not encouraging you to tear down posters. I don't think that's a great idea. But what I'm just saying, making the point that as a student, you can't violate someone's First Amendment rights in your role as just an everyday student. Okay? But we've gotten to this before because people are really creative, right? So not at our campus, luckily, but at other campuses where you have ingenious faculty members who say, well, students can't violate First Amendment rights, so I'm going to ask a student to do something for me that would be violation if I did it, but I'm going to ask a student to do it. That doesn't work, right? So if you can't have someone else do something for you that you couldn't do yourself, that's also a violation of the First Amendment. So these cases kind of just roll out with these exceptions, and so it's important to know that. So, go ahead, that's fine. Yep, you're good. You're anticipating. So there have been some recent Iowa laws that have touched on these areas that are important for you to understand. The first one, if we move on, is the House File 802, which has gotten a lot of press on campus. You can move this slide. So House File 802, this is really not a First Amendment law, but a lot of people characterize it or understand it kind of in First Amendment terms, so I'm going to talk about it a little bit. House File 802 prohibits mandatory staff or student trainings that teach or promote or act upon these specifically defined concepts that are in the law. They all have to do with race and gender issues that we've kind of seen being debated on the national political spectrum. So it also prohibits discrimination based on political ideology or any other characteristic protected by law. We already had laws that said that, but this is just a repeat, essentially, so you can't be discriminated against because of your political ideology either. This law applies to all state government entities, including our institution. The next slide's just, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but there's the list. The next three slides just have the list of the specifically identified topics that are not to be taught or discussed in mandatory trainings. So there's kind of two prongs to the law. We can't have mandatory trainings that touch on these topics, right? So doesn't mean that these topics can't be discussed in non-mandatory trainings, or that there's not a host of other topics on related issues that can't be discussed in mandatory trainings. So it's fairly narrow, I would say, but also important. So as it relates to things on campus, kind of the controversy is around how does this perhaps apply to coursework. There's a broad exception in the law that says that you can discuss these topics in a broader course of academic instruction, okay? And so what does that mean? It's hard to know exactly what was meant by that language. The way that we believe it should be interpreted is just like we would under traditional standards of academic freedom. So a professor has academic freedom to teach within his or her expertise, as long as what's being taught is germane to the overall course or relevant to the overall course. So if you're teaching a class in math, you can choose how to teach math if you're a professor, but you can't then use your class to teach genetics, because that's not germane to the course that you're saying, right? So, and it's not within your expertise as a mathematician. So that's not a likely example, but it's just to kind of give you the bounds of it, right? If a professor is teaching something that's relevant to the class, that's in a course of academic instruction and is protected by academic freedom. In the context of House File 802, then, if the identified concepts are relevant to the overall course, then there's no problem with those being taught in class. If they're being taught in a class where there's no relevancy to those topics, then there's a greater risk that those would be seen as inappropriate in those classes. So we haven't really had any issues on campus with this. I think our professors are uniquely able to navigate through this, and I think we're in a good space on this topic. The next slide and next one. There you go. House File 744. This one does have a provision that was targeted directly at you as student government leaders, so you'll want to be aware of this. But House File 744 prohibits faculty, staff, and staff from violating students' First Amendment rights. Of course, that was already in the Constitution, so nothing new there. But then it also requires free speech training to be given to all students, faculty, and staff. And so in the next few weeks, you'll see a new training module that'll show up in Canvas that all students will be invited to take. It'll be like a 15-minute training on the First Amendment. Hopefully it'll be kind of a repeat of what you're hearing tonight, but it's being developed. It'll be the same for all three universities. It'll be advanced by the Board of Regents and presented from them. So you'll see that coming up. Next slide. And then also, as it relates to student organizations, as I talked about, your role in student government, directing funds, if you were to do that in a way that was determined to violate First Amendment rights of a student, then the student government could lose the ability to direct funding. That ability would revert to the administration, and student government would lose the ability to conduct that part of their business. So, as we talked about, the things, if you as a body, were to make a decision that was based on ideology or viewpoint, then you could violate this law and lose the ability of student government to distribute government funds. So, I think it's something that you want to take seriously. You do have, I would say, there haven't been a lot of issues. I've not seen issues from student government, and I think we have a good relationship with you. If you have questions about these issues, we will try to advise you, kind of through this. But, I think it's something that you should at least be aware of and acknowledge the risk there in your duties and obligations. So, I want to talk just for a few minutes about First Amendment rights in the classroom, because this does come up frequently. So, students also have First Amendment rights in the classroom and academic freedom rights in the classroom. You have the right to express your opinions as long as they're relevant or germane to the coursework that's going in the class. You have the right to be graded on core class materials, not your ideological beliefs or your expression, your free expression that's protected by the First Amendment, as long as it's done within the bounds of what's reasonable and as long as it's germane to the class that's going on, right? And so we have some examples on the next slide. These are kind of interesting to go through. These come from actual cases. So in a class assignment, a student submits a graphic cartoon depicting a police officer raping the Statue of Liberty. What do you think? Do you think that's protected speech? You'd have to know the context, but in this case it was. The assignment was a political science assignment. The cartoon was depicting an ideological belief about that assignment. It was relevant to the assignment and was protected speech. The second one, the student completes a daily writing journal, and the entries in the journal are titled Hot for Teacher and describe the professor as tall, blonde, and stacked. What do you think, protected speech? This was closer than you might originally think. It's closer than I originally thought. So the assignment was simply to write in a diary. Okay? And so the court said, they actually held that this was not protected, but gave a pretty strong warning to say, the assignment should have been different. Because if you say write anything, then what you get is what you get, right? So, and then the third example, a nursing student posts information on Facebook denigrating patients, essentially taking photographs of patients and different things. That was not protected speech, okay? So you can kind of see how this works in the classroom if it's related, germane to your assignment. But now you can be held accountable, right, for learning the topic, right? So this is an example that's all over the cases in the 1950s when there was a hot debate about whether we should teach creationism or intelligent design in college, or whether people should be forced to learn about Darwin and his theories. I know that's not a debate anymore, but at the time it was a big debate. And the Supreme Court held that while you could be held, there's no responsibility for the university to teach creationism. They don't have to teach just because people don't believe it. They don't have to change the way they're teaching. So that's academic freedom, right? They can still teach that. But the student doesn't have to believe it either, right? So but they have to learn the fundamentals of it. They have to be able to take a test on it and pass the test and understand the concepts. But the professor can't require you to believe it, right? So even if you express in your view that you don't believe it, you can't be downgraded for that as long as you can express your understanding of the fundamental principles associated with it. And so you can see that happening on campus today. It's not with that issue, but with other issues, right? You could have a class where you're asked to write a piece on someone's view of abortion, pick a side, right? Whatever side you don't currently agree with, right? And the professor could require you to approach that topic from a certain viewpoint, right? The viewpoint of a reader, or read an article and state that viewpoint, okay? And they can hold you accountable for doing that, even if that is on the other side of your personal belief regarding that topic. But what they can't do is take points off because you don't believe and you express your opposition to that concept. Okay, so I think, again, we don't see a lot of issues in this. I think our professors do a really good job on this, but sometimes those issues arise, and you should feel comfortable and confident in challenging, if that's happening. Make a complaint, bring it to the provost's office. I would say, I think we've seen this interesting habit of people going outside the university first. So the first time we learn of that someone's got an issue or is having a struggle is when we read it in College Fix or one of the other newspapers targeted at you all. There might be a time for that, but usually if you bring it to someone's attention on campus first, we can typically help you, get through those things. So again, if you want to go to College Fix, that's fine, but I'm just saying if you want maybe a quicker resolution, there's probably a better way on campus. So we have just a couple minutes left. In fact, I may be just a little bit over, but are there questions? Any questions that's come up in the material that's been raised today?
It looks like our finance director has a question out here in the back.
Howdy. So you mentioned this a little bit. One thing that's kind of difficult for all of us to manage, of course, we're in this roles on Wednesday nights, and we're private citizens when we're asleep in our homes, but there's a lot of areas where we might be talking to each other in the Senate office, or where we're just casually discussing. I personally live with two other members of student government. So how do you draw the line between when we are and when we're not acting as state actors?
Yeah, so it really only applies when you're acting as within the authority of the body, right? So you individually on your own can't really take action for student government, right? You can express opinions, you can debate here, but you only take action when you vote on something that is enforceable, right? And that's when you become a state actor, okay? So you should feel free to express your views here, express your private views, debate, all of that. Nothing in that puts you in any jeopardy. It's just when you take action. Now, as the administration, you act a little differently, right? You have the ability to exercise some power without kind of the deliberative body of the Senate. So anytime you're taking official action of student government, then you're going to be subject to the First Amendment. But only in those times when you're doing something that has official, impact, official authority, official, deliberative action. Is that helpful?
Yeah, thank you.
Senator Advait.
Thank you for coming out tonight again. I have a question about the non-resource distribution related roles that student government has. For example, let's say we're passing a resolution making clear student government's position on an issue that may or may not be political, might even be disagreeing with something someone else has said. Would the First Amendment, in fact, protect our freedom of speech as a body to pass a resolution or a motion of censure against someone, either part of the campus community or part of this body itself, for an action that we don't agree with that might otherwise be protected?
Yeah, so you have the ability to use your free speech as well, both individually and as a body. You have the ability to use free speech. It would be the context of censure. If it depends, right? It depends on how that arises and what does it mean, right? So if you're taking action against someone or something because of their ideological view, and that action has some punishment associated with it, so some deprivation of rights or of money or real concrete kind of deprivation of exercising the authority to remove someone's privilege because of their ideology or their speech, that could be problematic depending upon the context that it's done in.
Am I correct in understanding the test here is a substantial, infringement on what they can do as a part of the body? If it's just a statement, it's actually.
Yeah, I would stay away from substantial, because what's substantial to you may not be substantial to someone else. But if you're taking official action that deprives someone of a student government right that they otherwise would have, and you're doing it because of their ideology or their expression, then I think you're treading on potentially dangerous ground.
Absolutely. And could you expand on how the First Amendment applies to legislatures in general? For example, at least at the federal level, I've heard of congressmen or congresspeople essentially not being seated to committees if they have not been, depending on what they've been acting on and depending how they've been behaving. How does that apply to legislatures and the inherently political processes there in general, and then for student government specifically?
Yeah, so you have broad immunity to your discussion and your debate and your activity here, and from the federal legislative body they have broad immunity based on how they're exercising their rules and so forth in Congress, and so I don't know that really applies at your level, other than to say that your role as a legislative body, right? You're not going to be. You have immunity essentially for what you say in a debate, for example, or that's not indicative of the body's overall view. So and because you say something here doesn't have legal impact, so you have protections there. But like for example in the UNI example, right? They're going to use what you say here to try to understand the rationale behind official action that the Senate takes, and so you have to be aware of that, right?
And this last one's going to be a very specific question, because I think this is something that's very much within the realm of possibility for us. Let's say we have, this happens pretty often, let's say we have a nomination for someone to join this body, and then we have letters and feedback coming in from constituents saying, oh, this person doesn't represent the way we feel as a constituency. Is Senate in that case, because I want to comply with the First Amendment, I'm pretty sure everyone here does, are we within our rights to then vote against that individual being added to this body based on their constituents feeling constituent feedback that, oh, hey, this person doesn't represent us, or is that running up against the First Amendment?
Yeah, again, these questions are very context-based. Everything's going to be looked at in the context of the facts that they rise in. But you have content-neutral rules about how people are appointed to your body or elected to your body. And it would be okay to have some sort of representative requirement, right? If you had a requirement that said, you know, you vote someone in and they represent you, and you have some mechanism by which to say they no longer represent me, but just purely making a decision that I'm not, you know, we have a decision to make about someone joining our body, and we're going to, based on their ideology, not allow them in. I think that would potentially put you at risk, yes.
So if I'm understanding you correctly, content-neutral reasons only for voting someone down, generally speaking.
Yeah, I mean, content neutral and then consistent, right, with how you would relate to anybody that was presented to you to represent someone. So, I mean, context is going to matter, right? But if the underlying group says this individual doesn't represent us, and there's a mechanism for that group saying we no longer want this individual to represent us, and they follow whatever rules you have for expressing that, and then you can take action in a content neutral way according to your own rules, right? But you can't just say, well, I don't like what that person personally stands for, or what their ideology is, or anything like that. You would definitely run on thin ice on making a decision like that.
Thank you again, and thank you again for your time and coming out tonight. I yield.
Senator Mahoney?
So I just had, excuse me, I just had a question about the specific bill or specific House file order that was relating to student governments. I know there was a line in there that we have to distribute funds in a neutral way that does not violate the First Amendment. I was wondering if you could expand on that so that we all kind of know what we have to keep in mind when we're passing legislation.
So again, you can have all kinds of content and viewpoint neutral reasons for distributing funds, but you can't distribute funds based on content-based reasons, so or viewpoint or speech reasons, right? So you know, you can have. I'm not totally familiar with your funding mechanisms, but you can have, for example, you know, tiers of student orgs, some that have funding available to them, some that don't, and there's some definition as to why, right? They serve the entire university, or they are sponsored by some department, or you know, something just content neutral, you know, rules about how you're going to decide how your money gets spent. All of that's fine, but you can't make funding decisions based on ideology. Okay? You could have a rule, and you may have something, right? We won't give money to political to student organizations that are backed by a political party. Okay, content neutral, perfectly acceptable. But then you couldn't say, okay, but we're going to fund, you know, the Democratic club and not the Republican club. Okay, is that helpful? Yeah.
Senator Hayes?
Yeah, you were talking about some academic freedoms, and I guess I was just wondering, so if a professor were to not grade you differently based on like the opinion that you expressed in the paper, but were to leave feedback on the paper, if that feedback was not necessarily like detriment to your grade, but they just replied with their own ideological opinion about your paper, is that still protected underneath the First Amendment, or is that not germane to their position?
Again, it's going to matter, context matters, but in general, that's not a violation of First Amendment rights. They certainly can even challenge you on your belief, right? They don't have to just if I come up with some crazy idea in my math class or economics, let's say, and I have some crazy economic theory that I've developed on my own, based on my own research as Mike Norton, the lawyer, it's okay for the professor to say, really, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? You understand this? Have you read this research? Are you familiar with this, thought process on that? All of that stuff might make me feel uncomfortable, right? Because I haven't done my homework or I have purposely ignored, research that's not consistent with me. But none of that is a First Amendment violation, as long as they don't then say, and by the way, even though you got this right, I don't like the way you think, and I'm gonna write you down because of that.
Wonderful, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Is there any more questions? Great. Seeing none, thank you so much for coming this evening.
Thank you, and I just want to thank you for your service to the university. What you do here is tremendously important, and really appreciate. I know and understand how much time it takes. Alejandra and I were together at 8 o'clock this morning interviewing people for the diversity position. So I know, and she's just one of you, but I know all of you have things that are going on in school, and this is just another thing that adds on. So thank you for your service and your commitment to the university. Appreciate it.
All right, with that, we'll go ahead and move on to open forum for this evening. Is there anyone? Open forum is an open discussion of issues relevant to students. Is there anyone here for open forum this evening? All right, seeing none, we'll go ahead and move on to adopting tonight's agenda. Is there any additions to tonight's agenda? Senator Rulli?
I move to add the Winterfest line item transfer to the bottom of new business as suggested on the document, the agenda.
There's been a motion and a second to move Winterfest line item transfer to the bottom of new business. Is there any objection? All right, it's been added to the bottom of new business. Senator Mahoney.
Motion to add Senator Patel to the roll.
It's been a motion to add Senator Patel to the roll. Seeing no objections, she's been added to the roll. Moving on, Senator Wegmeister, did you have? Nope. Great. Is there a motion to adopt tonight's agenda? It's been moved and seconded to adopt tonight's agenda. Seeing no objection, tonight's agenda is adopted. Moving on to the approval of minutes from last week. Is there a motion to approve last week's minutes? It's been moved and seconded. Seeing no objection, the minutes from last week's are approved. On to committee reports, beginning with rules with Speaker Weathers.
All right. Hello, everybody. Rules met yesterday, 4:30 p.m. and we ran for quite a while, as is becoming the case now. It seems like we don't have enough time allotted for all the work that we need to get done, but maybe that's just because we're reaching the end of the semester. But we saw 2021-2-044Y, and you'll note on the agenda that that's been crossed out. That's because it's been held in committee for 1 week. Senator Hayes came and spoke, and we had all agreed there unanimously that we couldn't accomplish the amount of changes that needed to be made to the document within the Rules Committee with the amount of things we had going on. So Senator Hayes and Senator Debate, and I believe other people may be involved, will work on coming up with amendments outside of committee. But you'll see that next week, no doubt. And then we also began our bylaw review. We looked over chapters 1 and 2 of the bylaws, which is several pages, and there's a lot of changes, suggested changes, edits, things like that came out of that. So you will be seeing a bill. I don't know when, but it'll be a bylaw bill making a lot of changes, and Rules Committee will discuss it. Yeah, there's a lot there. Chapter 2 basically covers Senate policy and operations, so a lot of people had a lot of thoughts on that, myself included. I think the only other thing that's pertinent to all of you right now is that Rules Committee is currently going through its annual report on student government contracts and agreements. So every committee member has been assigned a particular contract or two that student government is involved in with outside parties. Right now, they will be reaching out to those organizations, asking for a list of services that they provide to both us and students at large, whether or not those services are still worth continuing, things like that. And so we as a committee will be looking over the language of those documents, the feasibility of continuing them or discontinuing them if we feel that that's a good action to take. And then we will be writing a report to all of you detailing the committee's thoughts on every contract, and that'll also be useful to future administrations and senators and everyone in student government who might enter into new contracts based on those. Yeah, I think that's all I have right now. Let me know if you have any questions, but thank you all.
Moving on to Finance Committee with Finance Director Zastro.
Well, I'm thinking about this. Who's got the daily for the contract report? Cool. I will reach out to you. I have a document that would be nice. So in finance yesterday, we saw a line item transfer request from Winterfest that will be added to that has been added to the agenda for tonight. We decided that this should be coming through Senate. You'll notice a pretty substantial change in the special projects account total from last week to this week, about $80,000. That's because there was a carryover request bill that was passed by the Senate last spring, but never actually made it to COA. So that has been completed now after audits have been done. So the money originally came out of all those orgs accounts. It was 5 or 6 orgs, and then just got back to them now. I've communicated with the treasurers who might have seen an influx of like $8,000 on their account so that they know what's going on. But that explains the difference there. We have a seating bill for Senator tonight. P&C review is getting wrapped up. Or it is wrapped up as of yesterday. We finished up P&C review, so we will see that on first read next Wednesday. And then, like I mentioned last week about priorities, what we're going to plan on doing for that is adding the priorities as an amendment. There are 2 big benefits to that. First of all, it gives all the committees another week to talk about it a little more. It also is going to have a specific motion for Senate to debate priorities because these are very important. So I think that that'll be a really good opportunity for Senate to have kind of, not to say forced debate, but like you guys will have a specific motion on the priorities, which I'm excited for. I hope you guys have to extend debate on that motion. So that's all I have. If there are any questions, happy to hear them. Thank you.
All right, moving on to PR Committee with Director Johnson.
Hi, everyone. I guess just to get started, we're doing a Thanksgiving video. Some of you participated tonight, but kind of why you're grateful to be in student government. So thank you to everybody that worked with our at-large members tonight. Really excited to see that come out in a couple weeks for Thanksgiving. And then also thank you to everybody that ordered from the clothing order. Bryce and then Senator Lent did a great job doing all the details on that. So that'll hopefully be out between Thanksgiving and Christmas for you guys to pick up. Also on Monday at 5, we'll have the second multicultural town hall. That'll be in the Multicultural Student Center, dinner provided, courtesy of Dr. Younger's office. So if you can make it out, we'd love to see everyone there. We've been promoting that. Bryce has some awesome graphics on the MUTVs if you've seen them, but then share that on your story and keep promoting that so we have a good turnout on Monday. And then also the new at-large members worked on a promotion campaign for the Give a Swipe program, kind of with the SI committee. So that went really well, and we're excited to see those come out very soon.
All right, now on to Diversity and Inclusion Committee with Director Flores.
Hello. I've been sick, so I'm back. So I don't have a lot of updates because I was recovering. So one of the cool things that we're doing is that I don't know if any of you have heard of this, but there's something called an Undocumented Ally Training. This was developed by ISU Dreamers last year as a form of understanding issues that DACA students and other undocumented people face. We are about to expand this to our staff, so that's very exciting. It'll still be offered for students, but we are starting with MSA. The Multicultural Student Affairs Program has agreed to help us kind of test this with their staff and take this. So Paco Peña, who's in my committee, will be doing that, and I'll be helping him. We're very excited about it, and we're hoping to expand that even more. That's all I got.
Student Initiatives with Senator Debate.
Hello, everyone. Student Initiatives had its last regular meeting on Sunday, the 7th of November. In terms of what was discussed at the meeting, we discussed the safety walk and sort of just closing thoughts on that, thoughts as we're moving ahead. In a similar vein, if any of you have feedback or thoughts or things we could incorporate going ahead, we'd love to hear from you and build that into the next safety walk. Speaking of the walk itself, we accumulated at least 100 points of interest. This includes stuff such as street lights that are out, dark areas on campus, mismatched concrete panels, broken concrete panels that say a skateboarder could trip off and fall off of. So thank you everyone to all of you that participated. It really makes an impact. All the points have been sent on to FP&M and we should have a report in nice PDF form at some point coming up. Other things at the meeting included the access walk. Is Senator Thornton here? No. But Senator Sett, would you like to talk more about the access walk and tell Senate what's coming up on Tuesday?
Yes, I would absolutely love to talk about that. So we are doing an access walk. This is kind of one of the first times that we've done this, so we're still trying to figure things out, but we have that planned for next Tuesday at 6 p.m. I think we finally decided that we'll be meeting at Parks. Sorry, Advait. I know you wanted the MU, but we're meeting at Parks. So we'll be meeting at Parks Library, and we'll be essentially going to 2 different campus buildings. We'll be going to Agronomy Hall as well as State Gym, and basically just taking a stroll through the building and looking for access features. So things like, if you press the automatic door openers, do those work? Other features such as, no tripping hazards on the floor, just stuff like that. So there will be donuts provided that are free. So you should totally show up at Parks Library at 6 p.m. on Tuesday for the access walk. Probably shouldn't take more than an hour or so. So come out, walk through some buildings, and take some notes with us. It would be much appreciated.
Thank you, Senator Sett. In terms of other projects, our pumpkin smashing event, we have a meeting with event authorization and risk management tomorrow. I'm sure they'll have a few choice things to say, and we hope to have a productive discussion, sort of understand where they're at, see if the event can happen. But if it does, we have I think we have pumpkins on tap and stuff, and they're going to be free to the committee thanks to Senator Larson, so that's fantastic. Going ahead in terms of other administrative stuff the committee has done, I interviewed a potential new at-large. That is the seating bill up actually right after, once we're done with all of our comments. And yeah, that's about it. If you have any questions, please do let me know. If you have initiative ideas, as always, my inbox is open. And also, we have 2 open Senate spots, and after tonight's bill, we should have, well, if it passes, 2 open at-large spots. And one last thing, SI is running at almost an event a week. This is a pretty fantastic clip, so if you see an SI committee member, be sure to thank them, because it takes a lot of dedication and a lot of hard work, and everyone on SI has really been pulling together, and I'm really proud of everyone on the committee. I yield.
All right, next civic engagement with Senator Paulson.
Hello, just some updates with my committee is I recently met with Alyssa Rodriguez, who is the president of ISU's Go Vote 2.0, and so we just kind of talked about just different stuff that we both wanted to do, as well as like collaborating in the next couple weeks and semester. And then also I've been interviewing some possible at-larges, so that will probably be coming up in the agenda soon, but that's all.
With that, we'll go ahead and move on to comments from the Student Government Advisor with Sophia.
Okay, hello everyone. We are now officially in November. That means, including this meeting, we have 3 meetings left. So we're kind of getting to that part of the semester where a lot of things are happening, and there are events every week. So make sure to take some time, take care of yourself. It is starting to get chilly, things in that nature. So yeah, also if you're thinking about plans for next spring already and like to chat about them, please let me know. I'm more than happy to talk. I do work all of winter break, so I am here still to help you. That's my inbox is always open. If there's anything else, I will be sending an email, but I can't think of anything. So.
All right, is anyone from judicial branch here? Doesn't look like it, so we'll go ahead and move on to President Campbell.
Hey, good evening, everyone. One thing I want to bring to your attention today is that it was very exciting. Governor Reynolds signed a proclamation declaring November 15th as America Recyclables Day. And so our Director of Sustainability, Elizabeth Smith, had the chance to go down, and she's in the photo with Governor Reynolds as they signed that. So pretty cool. If you see Elizabeth, you'll have to ask her about it. The Campbell Scoop should be in your email inbox. There's a couple things there I want to briefly discuss, beginning with President's Council that took place last Friday due to the Board of Regents meeting. It had originally been rescheduled, and you can see some of the topics that were discussed there, including the university's United Way campaign to support the local Story County area, a general university update from President Winterstein. Mike Norton gave a COVID-19 update, and finally, we had Christy Darr, the Vice President for HR, come in and speak and gave an excellent update about human resources on campus, and put a few things on the group's radar that might be coming in coming days. The next comment is a point about the Board of Regents free speech survey that I would encourage and urge all of you to participate in. It's a fairly brief survey. It takes about 5 to 6 minutes. And with that being said, it closes on December 1st. And not only take it yourself, but strongly encourage those peers around you to take it to ensure their voices are heard in this matter. It says in the executive update, but the survey is completely anonymous, and your responses will not be tied to you, but the Board of Regents, as the governing body over Iowa's public universities, will use the information to help provide an educational, living, and working environment that protects the First Amendment rights, and this might potentially be used as information as going forward in future legislative sessions. So ensure your voice is heard. Additionally, communication again came from the Board of Regents today regarding President Biden's Executive Order 14042 that talks about ensuring adequate safety protocols for federal contractors and what it means for the university. I've attached that as a PDF in my email and would encourage you, if you haven't taken a look, that's an extremely important document containing lots of information. Just for your awareness, there's a couple action items if you so choose to go ahead. They all are voluntary, but just for your awareness, be familiar with that. Vice President Decker and I had met with Dr. Younger on Monday for our monthly meeting. We had a fantastic discussion, and some of you ran into her in the Senate office. She came in and we actually met in the Memorial Union, which was a change of scenery. In addition to discussing the search process for this new Senior Vice President for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, we talked about the Board of Regents free speech survey. She gave an update on what it would look like to have the public health coordinator position filled at Iowa State. That would be a new position coming out of the pandemic. We talked about risk management at a university level following the Crew Club incident. And among that, the Board of Regents presentations that they gave regarding mental health. I would point to the recent discussion about the U.S. diversity course objectives. With that being said, Faculty Senate yesterday, if you go in and read in the executive update, they had a vote that there was a motion on the table to rescind an earlier action by the executive board of the Faculty Senate that you can go about and read about in my executive update there, but the facts are in that email. Additionally, they approved a Bachelor's of Science in Healthcare Management, Master of Community Development, and a Master of Entrepreneurship. Two final updates. This next one, we are extremely sad, and we're not looking forward to it, but Alejandra, our Director of Diversity and Inclusion, is leaving us this fall as she graduates. With that being said, we have officially today opened up the application to begin accepting candidates for her predecessor. So we would encourage you to share that with anyone who's interested, and many of you within the organization would encourage you to look at that. So any questions can be directed to Vice President Decker, myself, or Director Flores. And finally, the Scithinx Campaign. We've talked about this, but it's an ongoing campaign to share a little love this holiday season. Between the 1st and 30th of November, it's open. You can send that to someone anonymously or with your name attached to it, faculty, staff, administrator, student, anyone on campus, and would encourage you all to spend some time, maybe over Thanksgiving break while you're watching a favorite TV show, to send those in. With that, that's all I have. I know it was a bit of a drier update from me tonight, but are there any questions I can answer at this point in time? All right, thank you.
All right, with that, we'll go ahead and move on to the agenda for this evening, starting with Special Orders 2021-2-030 SG Seating at Larges to Student Initiatives Committee with Senator Erdvait.
All right, this is the aforementioned seating bill for the aforementioned at-large. We had planned for them to be here tonight, but they had an exam review scheduled right over Senate. And obviously that was understandable in why they couldn't make it. However, they did send me a statement to read out on their behalf. They said, quote, "My name is Savannah Calouse, and I am currently a sophomore majoring in biology. I have been interested in joining student initiatives not only because I have been told the individuals involved are kind-hearted, but because I feel that I have the drive to make campus a better place. My goals for student initiatives range from ensuring everyone is safe walking on campus to outputting mental health support to students in times of need. I would love to be a part of a group that puts ideas into action because of the common care we have for this campus, students, and faculty. Thank you." I yield.
Speaker Weathers.
Were you able to garner any sort of experience that she had prior to you meeting with her?
What kind of experience?
Leadership or service or anything that would qualify her to be on the committee?
Our conversation largely didn't center around those. It was more administrative in terms of making sure that our current meeting times worked for them, our future potential meeting times for the fall worked for them. The way I think of it, at-larges don't necessarily have to have like comprehensive background leadership experience or so. I tend to think of the at-large position as a learn-on-the-job position, if that makes sense. And more importantly, just making sure that they know what the committee is and they seem passionate and they want to be actively involved in the committee. It's sort of the three main things I look for.
Okay, thank you.
Senator Seth.
So kind of focusing on the, nominees' enthusiasm for the committee. I guess what sense did you get during your meeting with the nominee about their enthusiasm or, maybe things they'd be interested in working on in the committee? Can you speak to that?
Sure. They seemed eager to be involved in the campus community more. I also asked them questions such as what their schedule was like, how many credits they were at. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that out loud, but they have plenty of free time on their schedule to be involved in the committee. What was your other question?
Yeah, I mostly just wanted to get a sense for, how enthusiastic were they about the committee, and were there any projects or initiatives in particular that they mentioned they were interested in working on?
So in terms of enthusiasm, this is the at-large I mentioned last week that I unfortunately had to leave hanging for a whole month. And the fact that they were still interested in the process after so long, I think, speaks to their interest to be on the committee. Further, they seemed to really pick up quickly when I was going through what the committee did. In fact, I didn't actually. They sent me their statement today all by themselves. I didn't help them write it. And I'm seeing references here to the safety walk and to our events such as Woofs and Wellness, which at least tells me when I told them what the committee did, they were listening and it made an impact on them, and definitely that played into what they sent out today.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. I yield.
Question has been called for and seconded. Is there any objection to voting now? All right. Any closing comments from Senator Erdvait? No closing comments. We'll go ahead and go into a voting period. Unanimous consent has been called for. Is there any objection to confirming the nominee for at-large Student Initiatives Committee unanimously? All right, seeing no objections, they have been confirmed. We'll go ahead and move on to the next item of business under Special Orders 2021-2-031 SG, seating of Senator to Finance Committee with Senator Wagmeister.
Yeah, Senator Patel, if you want to go up to the podium and talk as to how you're qualified.
Hi, everyone. I'm the senator for the residence halls, and I would like to be in the finance committee. I'm currently a freshman, and I am a finance major. I'm also involved in finance club and first year council, along with being the residence for senator, or for being a residence hall senator.
Speaker Weathers.
Hello, Coach. Yeah, I know when you were confirmed as a senator, you spoke about some experiences you had with finances in the past. Would you be able to reiterate those now?
I'm sorry, can you say that one more time?
Yeah, you had mentioned when you were confirmed as a senator that you had experience with like the financial process in some form or another in the past. Would you be able to reiterate that for the body right now?
For sure. So I'm also in finance club right now, but back in high school, since I'm a freshman here, I was involved in being the treasurer for many organizations within my high school, such as Future Business Leaders of America and a organization called Greater Ozark Center for Advanced Professional Studies on the medical strand.
Okay, thank you. I move to amend the bill in the first order clause to add Senator Patel's name.
There's been a motion to amend the bill by adding Senator Patel's name. All right. We'll go ahead and go into a discussion on that. Question has been called for and seconded. We'll go ahead and go into a voting period on that amendment. Unanimous consent has been called for. Is there any objection to adding that amendment unanimously? Seeing none, the amendment's been added. Back on the main motion. Question has been called for. Is there a second? All right, any objection to voting now? Closing comments from Senator Wagmeister? No closing comments. We'll go ahead and go into a voting period. Unanimous consent has been called for. Is there any objection to confirming the nominee for Finance Committee unanimously? Seeing no objections, the nominee has been confirmed. All right, now we'll go ahead and move on to new business. This is just first read, remember, so you can only ask yes or no questions or questions of intent. Starting with 2021-2-045F, funding the Justin Moral Society with Senator Zuber.
Yep, so basically, this is a club on campus, and they put in a request just for some funding for some books.
Any questions of intent? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to 2021-2-046F, Students for St. Jude line item transfer with Senator Ruley.
Yep, this is a line item transfer over $1,500. They're requesting to move funding from a silent disco to inflatables and production equipment to a caricature artist for their final event.
All right, any questions of intent? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and move on to 2021-2-047Y, Policy of the Court Bylaw Updates with Senator Aldrich.
Hello. So this would just be a bylaw amendment to 7.2, Chapter 7.2. It was brought to our attention from the Supreme Court, specifically C.C. Ibsen. It would basically just align our Supreme Court and its doings with Iowa and federal courts and their laws.
Any questions of intent? All right, seeing none, 2021-2-048F, Winterfest line item transfer with Senator Ruley.
This is another line item transfer over $1,500 that is requesting to move funding from a stage performer for their event to various entertainment items, and there was discussion about this in Finance Committee, so we will intend to send this to Senate as there are line items in here that are on a case-by-case basis. I yield.
All right, now going on to closing announcements. Senator Filippi.
Okay, so tomorrow, November 11th, is Veterans Day. The 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month pays tribute to all American veterans, living and dead. Freedom isn't free. It comes with a price tag that is paid by sacrifices veterans make in order to protect the freedoms that are so unique to our wonderful country. So if you get a chance, please thank a veteran tomorrow. Thanks.
Senator Advait.
Your lectures update is online at lectures.iastate.edu. And secondly, as part of the Rules Committee membership that I hold, you should see coming up in one of the 2 meetings that we have left, the Senate Rules of Order project. This has been quite the buzz with the Rules Committee for like 2 years at this point, and might as well get the ball rolling at this point. So what that essentially would involve, so right now, all of Senate's rules are included in the bylaws. This is analogous to at the federal level, for example, Congress having its internal rules of order in the United States Code, which would be rather odd. So this would break out Senate's internal rules of order into its own documents, somewhat similar to the rules of the court that we have, just to sort of make more clear the separation of branches and make more clear the separation of powers. If you are interested in this project, do let me know. Essentially what it's going to look like, I would imagine, is parts of chapters 2, 3, and a part of chapter 5. Most of chapter 5 would be broken out into this new document. So if this is something that excites you, let me know. Rules should see a rudimentary document up by Tuesday. I yield.
Senator Paulson, we'll just go down the line.
This is short, but the International Student Council, I believe, is having like a event in the sunroom. Sanjana and I went to it before, but it's going till 8:30. I would just recommend checking it out. It's really fun.
Senator Hayes.
And this is also short, but since I'm also graduating in a couple weeks, the curriculum committee will be open to have a new student government ex officio. So if you're interested in that, it's really fun. You get to talk about all the upcoming curriculum changes to the university, and you get to work with the faculty senate, who I don't get to interact with on a regular basis. Besides that, so yeah, if that's on your mind, come either talk to me or I'm assuming Julia about it. Thanks.
Senator Seth.
I just want to reiterate a plug that I made earlier for the Access Walk. We have made a graphic for the event that will be going up, that we'll be posting soon in the student government group chat. So I just encourage all of you to, 1, come to the Access Walk. There will be Dunkin' Donuts, and it will be a good time. And 2, share it to people that you know, and try to encourage them to come. I think this will be really interesting to see, where universities, where these buildings are, Agronomy and State Gym, where they're doing well with accessibility and where there might be areas to improve upon. So definitely encourage all of you to come and share out our graphics to people you know, so we can have more people show up. Thank you.
Senator Patel.
Hi, everyone. I just got nominated like 5 minutes ago for the Center Committee, and I just wanted to say thank you to everyone. Yay. Okay.
I'm just going to reiterate, Julia, or President Campbell, during her update, mentioned the free speech survey, and I just want to emphasize how important that is, that you all fill it out for sure, but for sure your constituencies as well. So if there's any groups you can pass that along to encourage, please do that. I know I'm a part of so many different group meets, and so some of those, like, send that in there, send a reminder, because I know we got the email a couple days ago, but it's really important, and that data is being passed along, and it could have a lot of impact on our future. So please fill that out. President Campbell?
Right now, from a holistic perspective for student health and wellness, I do want to plug, I know Megan, myself, and then Julie Anderson, who's here, we all teach fitness classes. If you're looking for a burst of energy, there's 4 open spots in our bar class tomorrow, but additionally there's yoga, anything that might, take some stress off from the semester. So they're all at no additional cost to you. You already pay for them. So the more you go to, you economically spread your overhead cost. So that's the plug there. But more importantly, I wanted to just say, again, let's celebrate Veterans Day and thank those who have served in our armed forces. Thank you, Senator Philippi, for the comments, and also your dedication. So happy early Veterans Day.
Senator Simmons?
Yeah, Director Smith just grouped me. So this is just a reminder that the Sustainability Committee has some open positions, and I'm going to be studying abroad next semester. So that is also an additional open position. So if you're interested, please reach out to her.
Closing comments from Senator Crabb and Weathers?
All right, so this is kind of a boring-ish meeting. We did do some cool stuff like seat people. We're about to head into some really, not heavy, just a lot of stuff. We have the election code, we have P&C coming up, we have a lot of the bylaw reviews coming up, so, just be ready for those. Don't forget to do your mentee. We've been doing really good with office hours, so I really appreciate that. I've had to not email Dawson as much, it's been great. And then also, I want to say that wintertime is a wonderful time to start your projects or start new projects. The administration is still here, and that's where I got a lot of my stuff done last year. So if there's anything that's kind of on your mind, that's a good time to start them. And also another thing of, I just want to remind you all that just remind yourself why you're here. I know that when I was running for Senate, I guess this year, and then when I applied to be part of Senate for Human Sciences, there's all these things that I wanted to accomplish, and I'm getting a little sappy because I'm getting close to the end of my time here. But just don't forget those. Yeah, so thank you.
Yeah, I think Vice Speaker Crabb brings up a good point. We're all elected to serve students, and as the second session comes to an end, as Sophia said, only 3 meetings left. The amount of time that we all collectively have left to get those projects done to make effective changes for the students is dwindling down. So if you need any help on getting any of that done, reach out, please. I don't have a lot. I'm happy to say that this was a short meeting. I think we all deserve it. One thing I just wanted to put out there, I don't think it's anything of substance right now, but it's just a thought rattling around in my head. I've been thinking about working on establishing a new committee. It'd be something along the lines of a committee on city affairs and relations or something like that. The thought process right now is just that our ex officio would chair the committee, Trevor, and then we would have senators and maybe some at-larges on there, but essentially they'd be dedicated to being on city committees, working with the city, basically improving our relations with the city of Ames. Not that they're bad or anything, but I think we can accomplish a lot of work when we have strong relations with them. Let me know if you want to be involved with that. That's not solid right now, like I said, that's a castle up in the sky, so if you want to help me build the foundation, let me know. Yeah, I don't have anything else. Thank you all. Go Cyclones, move to adjourn.
Is there a second? Seeing no objections, this meeting is adjourned.